Hello, everybody. I'm Liz Duclo, the General Consultant with Central Kansas Library System.
Gail Santee, I'm the current director of the Central Kansas Library System.
Hello, and I'm Patty Collins. I'm your youth services consultant.
And here today we're to talk about the secretary position for a library trustee. So, some of your roles and responsibilities directly for the secretary is that you're the one in charge of sending out the notice or call of the meeting. That includes special meetings and things like that. And there are certain laws that you have to follow on when those should be published and how and things like that.
Sometimes,
But we have all that information. Go ahead.
sometimes that specific role, the call of the meeting, is delegated to the library director. If it's
That's true.
delegated, though, it needs to be stated and everybody knows ahead of time.
But you have to delegate it first and tell them so that they know.
Right.
That's important. Communication is very important. Another thing that you do is that you prepare the order of business for the presiding officer. And so you help them with that. Um, if you do not have a consent agenda adopted, you would be the one reading the minutes, the correspondence, or any resolutions that are put forth to the board by any committees or individuals. You are also the one recording the meeting. That's one of your most important jobs, is that you are the records keeper of the board.
And
And so
that's
you may also have to assist with voting and keeping track of that. And especially if they ask for a roll call vote, you need to write down the last name and first name of the people voting and what they voted for. You also are the one preparing the draft minutes. So, last board meeting, you were taking all your notes. Now you got to type them up and get them ready to be approved or changed and approved. And then you are also in charge of the correction and keeping, yeah, basically what I just said. But you can then also sign the approved minutes. So you can sign the minutes to approve them, but it has to be approved by the whole board before you do that
by a motion, right? And
by
so
a
what that
motion.
looks like is if in January you have a meeting, in February you look over the minutes and everything is fine, the board votes to approve the minutes, and then you sign the minutes officially, and that's what makes them official at that point. Um, Sometimes a board doesn't have a secretary, and the library director can be drafted to do that. And I would not recommend that that happen for more than 1 or 2 minutes because the meeting, sorry, because the library director has a very different role to play in a board meeting. A secretary is an important role. Um, Often, if someone is thinking about being the secretary, what puts them off is that they don't write fast enough or they don't know what to keep um, and what's important. And so they think they have to record everything. And that's just not the case. Um, you do need to prepare the minutes. CKLS has, and Patty created it, and it's the most marvelous tool. Libraries are loving it. We have what we call a draft agenda and a meeting template. And so together you would work with the director and the board chair, and you would create that meeting minutes template based on the agenda that has been prepared ahead of time. And so if that's the case, then you're kind of just filling in the blanks. You're writing down the motions. There's a space there. It says motion and who did the second, and a space for you to write that. And then there's a space for the discussion. And then there's a motion, I'm sorry, a vote and how that was voted on. So in the discussion part, if you're talking about who's going to bake the chocolate cake for the bake sale and who's going to bake the sugar cookies, you don't need to list all that out. You just can write discussion about the bake sale. Now, if it's something far more serious about that than that, you're going to want to capture the most important parts of that discussion, who said what and what they said. Um, and that's enough. And it should always be so and so said, Patty said, Liz said, not I feel or I think. It's just the bare minimum of what makes it important. Remember that our minutes are a matter of public record and they must be kept forever. And if someone asks for them, you have to be able to retrieve them. Patty, what can that look like?
So your you can keep your minutes in the typewritten form and in your board book. The A board book remains at the library regardless of what job you have on the board, but there is one master book that stays in the library. So if Mr. Jones walks in and says, I want to see the minutes from last night's meeting, that's a problem because they might not be done yet. But if you say, well, I can provide you the meeting prior to this month, yes, that's already in the board minutes. But again, um, it was signed last night, so those final ones may be in there, but you're not going to get final ones if it's between two meetings. You can also, once your minutes are finalized, you can actually have them live in a digital document. You don't have to keep a board book. However, your staff or whoever it is at the library has to be able to have access to them so they could print them out or show them to you. You can also keep your minutes online and they'll say unapproved or draft through that month, and then they will say final on your final minutes. So you have different ways you can get it, but it is required if someone asks for it that you actually hand them over.
And that's part of the Kansas Open Records Act. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that a secretary has to bring to the meeting? What's the essentials?
They should definitely bring some sort of capture tool that may be a laptop or that may be paper and pencil. And that's entirely up to the secretary. There's strengths in both, actually. And that will be up to them as to what they prefer. What I would not recommend is that you require your secretary to use a specific piece of software or a specific kind of computer or on a tablet or things like that. That learning curve might be too much for them. What really is important is that those minutes are captured and that they are recorded. How it's done is not as important. Sometimes the secretary is someone who's not comfortable typing up or using a computer, and they handwrite the minutes, and then they have the library director or another library employee type those up. Then they take a look at them and then they approve them ready to go to the package for approval for the next month. That's an acceptable thing as well. And so, like I said, the library director has their own responsibilities, but when it comes to board meetings, one of their biggest responsibilities is to support the board. And that can be, helping type up the minutes and have them ready to go.
One thing that you can think about as you take that position as secretary, you're not going to look like the secretary before you, and the next one won't look like you as well. And so um, you have to remind the rest of your board that this is new for me and that I'm not quite as good at the computer, for example, as Mrs. Jones might have been before me. And the next person comes in might make me look like I'm, that I'm still working in the Stone Age. But that's okay too. As long as you're capturing the minutes and that everybody, when they look at them the following month, approves them, that you're getting the information accurate. And if you miss something or there's something to be corrected, that's not a failure. Remember, they're all not writing as fast as you are or typing as fast as you are. And I have served as secretary in several organizations, and I tend to write too much. And so I also talk with my board chair to make sure that I cut out the stuff that they really don't need. So don't be offended if you get edited either, because it can happen.
And
Yes.
also, if you have a timid personality, it's your job to clarify things,
That's what
okay?
I was ready to
It
say.
is it
You're
it's not an
confident.
interruption, it's not an imposition. It is your duty to make sure you are capturing things correctly.
And
And
so
so
that
if
may
you need to
mean
ask them to slow down, you need to go ahead and just say, "Hey, I need to record this properly. Could you repeat that or could you slow down a little bit too?" And then if you're not the best speller like me, and I know plenty of people who have a very interesting last name, and I know people mispronounce my name all the time, have a list of everybody's names written out as they prefer it, like as their legal names written out, so that you can refer back to that because you need to put the first and last name in with all those motions and everything.
In some places, the library is a little more formal and they use titles. So it may be Mr. John Jones.
Mhm.
Find out what when you first start, find out what the board wants. And when motions are out there, um, at the very beginning, if you don't know everybody in the room, because hopefully there's always two new board members when you take over this position. Hopefully there's at least two rolling off. And so, yeah, you might have their names, but you don't know which is which. And say, might ask to say, I move, Patty Collins moves too. And then you might rein it back to them because you do have a voice in that meeting. You don't just have your head down doing your thing. So, and you're also the person who, because of being able to speak, you're also the person who reads correspondence. So if we've received, if there's an article in the paper that seems to be the buzz, you might have to read the article in the paper. So if you know about that, read it and practice ahead, especially as Liz said, if you're a little more timid. So you know you gotta grab on and do your thing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so
I think one of the things that we haven't talked about that the secretary does is of utmost importance. And yeah, the treasurer prepares the checks, or if you have a bookkeeper, they prepare the checks. But the treasurer never signs the checks. That is a job for the president and for the secretary. And I
yep.
think that's one of your very important roles. Secretary is an important position as of equal importance as the other board officers. Yeah, yeah. Um,
You are as much of a volunteer as anyone else on that board.
right.
We
And
thank you for
Wow.
that.
So I don't get paid?
No, you
no,
don't get paid. No one gets paid
board
if you're
members
volunteering. I'm sorry, that's against the
actually
law.
be reimbursed. So those would need to be approved ahead of time, yes, but you don't get paid to be at the meeting. You are one of the most important volunteers in your community. Um,
In the case where you may have a person that needs to join, one of your board members that needs to join by phone, you will want to be placed in the room as close to that speaker as possible. So it is appropriate for you to sit on the other side. Likely your library director sits on one side of your board chair, and you would sit on the other side of the chair. So you make sure that you hear everything that the chair is saying, but also are able to hear motions or conversation that occurs through the phone.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, moving on. Some, um, if you're becoming the secretary, this may actually be your first position on the board. Um, and so what's the order of business usually that happens during a board meeting?
So
So go
got
ahead.
it. Um, Remember that CKLS has a template for you for the agenda and for the minutes. Things that are going to be listed on there is public comment. Your board will determine what's appropriate for public comment, and it needs to be across the board month after month after month. You can't make special rules because Mr. Smith is going to come and talk to the board. They need to
And
be applicable across the board.
And also regarding public comment, you need to determine as a board, are we just putting the name of the person and the topic? Or do you have to have some of those details?
Mhm.
And so you need to determine as a board that can change on that particular meeting if it has to, but you at least need to know and be prepared. And I always leave a great big old spot for public comment in case I need it.
Yes.
Yep.
If your board has approved using a consent agenda, that's one of the very first things that will be your order of business. Approving the past minutes and past financials is important, and both should be signed. Any reports like the library director's report, reports of committees. If say you didn't have a committee, but Sue Smith was directed to investigate estimates for roof repair. That would be a report that would go there too. Hopefully you're going to have written reports that you can use to help you craft your minutes after the fact. New business, of course, and emotions must be captured. Discussions, and discussions is where I find that a lot of secretaries end up taking actually way too many minutes. They need to capture the idea of the discussion. And you're going to have any voting. If the chair calls for a roll call vote, you'll need to know how to capture that. That's important. Any unfinished business, of course, we've addressed any correspondence and a meeting adjournment as well. What is really nice at the bottom of the agenda is to put the date and time of your next month's meeting.
And if you're worried about like the different types of voting, CKLS does have those informational materials on like how to do that. We have a little cheat sheet. And so you and your board will decide which parliamentary procedure you're going to follow. Most often it's Robert's rules. So we have
Boards.
For small boards, she says, it's called Robert's Rules of Order in brief. And this is mainly what people go to for the smaller boards. We also have cheat sheets and things like that. And again, as the lady said, we have some wonderful templates created by Madam Patty. Okay, so what are, Miss Patty, the four main things that library boards can do by Kansas law?
Library boards need to hire a enthusiastic, competent, capable director. And Gail always puts that caveat on there. And sometimes certainly needs to evaluate, but sometimes may have to let that person go. They need to procure funding, which means whatever your municipality that you're receiving tax dollars from, you need to create a budget, present that to the municipality, and get that approved. And then
the relationship ahead of time too.
Let's see, where was I? What number was that?
Director, finances.
Procure a building or a space to house the library. So that might be renting a storefront that's been abandoned. It might be adding on to your existing building. Or if the money gods shine down, it might be working on getting a brand new building built. And then the last one is all of these activities work in direction with the library director, but the last one is writing policies and making sure that the policies actually fit your library. They don't look like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because they have different problems than we do. And so you're trying to make policies that fit your community. And sometimes you may have to make a policy based on a trend that's happening in your library, but when it gets to that point and you're not sure, is this time to write a policy? Again, you call us and we're glad to help you through those steps.
And you don't actually have to write it. You just kind of have to be like, oh, samples. I'm going to steal this and put them together. We can actually help you with that. We have a bunch of sample policies and we can help you decide what's best, what might be best. We can present that information. You and your board, your whole board, will be the ones to decide what works for your community.
And the library board is the body who is empowered through Kansas legislation to approve policies. No one else can do that. The best policies are always made with the library director and the board working together.
So okay, those are things that statutes say that you get to do. Like that's your area. What's the other very important thing that we say that everyone should do?
Advocacy does not have to be a dirty word. It is as simple as establishing relationships. And you know how to do that already. You already do a great job of that. You see someone you know at the grocery store and you stop and you visit. You see them in the line to pick up kids after school, you visit with them. You see them at church, you see them at other community events. Visit with them. But now you're going to also talk about how awesome your library is. Now, the three of us, we know how awesome your library is. We know what you're doing. how busy your Facebook page is with pictures of things that are happening in the library, posters up around town. Make it your business to know that as well. And then you've got something great to talk about.
Remember that every board member is also a face of the library. And so it's not just the library director or library staff. You become the face of the library. And so whether it's at the cafe or at the kids' ball game, and if somebody comes up and says, so tell me what's going on. I see a truck outside the library. What are they working on? Those kinds of things, you have the knowledge because you're part of the board. And then Gail always calls the big A advocacy when you have to talk outside of your community, or you might have to talk on a more formal level. And that might be it's the mayor who calls you because they know you're the secretary of the library board. So you've got your hand in all of the news, and they want to know what's going on. And so, you don't really change who you are, you just might change the words that you use. And there is that occasion because our legislators only live in Topeka 3 or 4 months of the year. You might run into somebody that happens to be the local representative at church or at lunch in Merides at Russell, because that happens to me every time I'm there. I run into one representative, and every time I stop, shake his hand, say hello, and say thank you for supporting Kansas libraries. And it can be that simple. And then it might be well, who do you represent? Who are you? Because they see millions of people. And so think of what you might say if that opportunity were to occur, but your mayor might be next door.
One of the
And
reasons we want to do this, and it does require stepping a little bit out of your comfort zone for most of us, but one of the reasons we want to do that is because we want our elected officials at the state level, at the national level,
And at your local level.
especially at the local level, right? They talk about my school or my hospital. We want them to talk about my libraries. And the easiest way for them to do that is for them to know how awesome you guys are.
the hard work that you do, the ways you better your community, because that's actually what libraries do. You're a community partner.
And
And
that's why you get tax dollars. Yep.
and it sounds fancy, but it doesn't have to be. Be you, um, own own your board position,
Yeah.
and know that sometimes the secretary job does look like the one that's actually working the hardest, because during that time period of that meeting, sometimes you are. But it's a job anybody can learn. We can teach you tricks if it's not for you, but don't shy away, because it's good experience, but it also prepares you probably the most for that advocacy work.
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing. I remembered this time, so that's good. So what does, how can a secretary help maybe a new board member? What's part of that process? What's that process and how can they help?
Sure. Well, hopefully, when you were a new board member, you had an orientation. You might not remember it because it just seemed like you were visiting and walking around the library. And the board chair sat down and visited with you for a little while. And at its most basic, that is what a new board member orientation is. Hopefully, they gave you a notebook that had the past 3 months of financials and minutes in the board packet. They got to know you a little bit, and there were documents for you to sign, but you also need to have the bylaws and any policies. Some of the documents that you might need to sign, or not that you might need to, that you probably have to sign, is a conflict of interest statement. If you're in a small town, your business may be the only ones that installs flooring and carpeting. And if the library needs new floors and carpet, you've already listed your business as a potential conflict of interest. You can certainly participate in discussions. You can put in a bid, but when it comes time to voting, you abstain from that vote because it would be a conflict of interest. You're going to sign a loyalty oath because the library does receive tax dollars. There'll be a Pathfinder agreement that you'll sign as a board, and the Children's Internet Protection Act will come up every now and again, and every year a gap waiver.
Now, does every library have to sign a Pathfinder agreement?
No, no, they don't, unless their library participates in the CKLS shared catalog, which is Koha or Pathfinder Central. Not every library does.
And why do they have to sign that agreement?
They signed that agreement because it shows that their library is going to abide by the rules and guidelines that are established, and that they are going to protect patron privacy as one of the biggest things.
Okay.
Oftentimes, how the secretary gets involved in all of this part is they're the one that's expected to read the thing so they can do the short version of what's in there. And so sometimes that does land on the secretary. But then
Congratulations, you signed up to be a presenter
In your own way.
in
That's
your own way. Make it your own. You know how goofy we are. Do the same or be entirely formal. It's up to you.
every board member needs to know about library finances. So even if you're the secretary, you want to carefully look at those finances. Sadly, it does happen that money is embezzled from libraries. And I don't know about you, but all of the libraries that I work with just don't have money to give away or can't really operate if money is stolen. And so every board member carries the responsibility of looking carefully over those financials, asking questions. If you don't know what this check was written for, ask. Ask. And you need to know about your building. We talked before about one of the important jobs of the board is to procure a building for the library. If your library has a building that is owned by the city, one of the things that CKLS recommends is that there's a formalized agreement in writing signed by the stakeholders that says who shovels the snow, who cleans the toilet, who pays for repairs, what happens if we need new paint. The days of a friendly handshake substituting as the necessary agreement are long gone. And so what we say is that people change, mayors change over, city councils change over, boards roll over, and library directors roll over. And so having something in writing is really crucial in this day and age to ensure that continuity.
All right, I think that wraps us up for the secretary position. If you have any questions or comments, let us know. We do have some handouts and slide deck to go with this presentation that actually covers everything. So save your notes. You can even print out this handout if you want, and contact us if you have questions.
Absolutely. The most important part of this presentation is the CKLS toll-free number at the end. We're here to help, and it's our pleasure. Thank you for watching.